Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you so much for joining. I'm joined by my guest today, Natasha Hynes. Sorry for messing your name up yesterday if you noticed, but she is here. You can unmute now. So that's perfect, because if you forget, then I know I can't hear you either. So
nice.
So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing wonderful.
Good.
So yeah, I've enjoyed a few of your videos, and you got to do a QHHT session. Actually, let me mention at the beginning of this for people watching later, that Sunday there's going to be, it's like a National Regression Day. Let me pull up the email real fast. Let's see. Lauren Hansen sent me this. She says, both Allison Coe and Pamela Erlin are doing live regressions on the 15th. And it's hosted by the Quantum Healing Practitioners Directory and Forum with host Candace Craw Goldman. And I did leave the link below. They're actually below Natasha's links to her channel, so you can go subscribe to her channel as well. And so what did you think of your QHHT session? Let's start with that since we're already on the topic.
It was weird. And as soon as it was over, it was like the only word I can think of was weird. And I just kept saying it over and over again. I'm like, that was really weird. It was just really weird. I just like had no other words for it. Because like I was expecting, and I think a lot of people who haven't done a QHHT session might have like a similar feeling about it, is that you think going in that it's going to be, you're going to be like super out, and like all these past life memories that you remember are like super tangible memories as if it happened to you in this lifetime. And it wasn't that at all. Like it really wasn't. Maybe it's different for some people, but it was more like I was lucid the whole time. And I know that I could have just like got up and walked away at any time. So you're under control of yourself. They're not like controlling you. They're suggesting things to your subconscious. The idea how hypnosis works is that you are put in a state of relaxation to the point where they have access to your subconscious mind, and the filter of your conscious mind is kind of like taking a nap. It's like, you know, set to the side, but they're still just giving you suggestions, and then you either take the suggestion or you don't. But some people are more susceptible to suggestion than others, and I'm like a rebellious spirit. Yeah. So like even in my session, you'll see he'll suggest things to me, and I'll just be like, no. I'm just like, no, that didn't happen. And I don't know if that's really speaking to the validity of the quote unquote memories or the quote unquote information that I was being given, because if he told me or suggested something to me that didn't felt in alignment, like it didn't felt right, I would just straight up be like, no, that's not what that means, and that's not what's happening. So
well, that's cool to know. Yeah, I know some people don't really remember much at all when they go through it.
Yeah, I didn't have much in terms of past life memories, and the ones that I did were very like kind of vague, wispy kind of memories. It was kind of like daydreaming, but guided daydreaming. So to try to get you to like go more in depth in the daydream and sense out the little details of it. But I didn't feel connected to it. I didn't feel like that was me. I didn't feel like I was that person. It was really weird.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was getting a little bit of an echo, they said, on just me. Let me see. I don't hear it now. I think it might have been coming back through your speakers at that time.
Yeah, it might have been. I'm trying to keep the microphone away from my computer.
Oh, okay. Okay, so What was your awakening experience like? How long have you really started to wake up to the spiritual side of things? Has it always been your journey, or what's it like for you?
It was. You guys hear these dogs? It's
Yeah, they're
like
not bad though. Yeah,
I
they're
never hear anything. And like as soon as we start this, it's like birds are like having an argument and like all the dogs in the neighborhood are going crazy. It's ridiculous.
probably
Somebody's
the mailman passing by. It'll be okay.
my awakening was very I think it was, I don't know what word to use, like specific. I remember the moment that I got my trigger. Like, you know, we're supposed to have these triggers on our journey that was supposed to trigger you to start waking up. And
Mhm.
I remember it so vividly. Like I had this friend at the time, and he was, I guess, essentially sent to trigger me because we had this conversation. We were he brought up this subject that he was uncomfortable talking about because it was, you know, this kind of thing, and not everyone's comfortable talking about it. And this was like years and years ago. This was, I don't know, years ago. I can't really give you a number, 5, 10. Time is really evasive to me right now. I can't tell time. But he started talking about Alex Collier and his experience with the Andromedans. And
Mhm.
he's like, there's this video. You need to see this video. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm going to have nightmares, but okay. So we watched like this whole thing. And I was like traumatized, but it like lit me up. And we just like wouldn't stop talking about this stuff. And we just started researching all this stuff. And it really was, I remember having the conversation with him when he brought it up, and I remember feeling it like viscerally, where I flushed with like chills, and I was just like, I really feel like this moment is like the first moment of something really important. Like this is like leading into the rest of my life. It was really crazy. So yeah.
That's wild. For me, the big trigger, because I've always been in the religion and been in the spiritual things, but I had drifted away, and my big trigger was seeing the Mandela effect changes. What's your experience been with the Mandela effect?
So a few years back, there was this movie coming out about Mandela. I don't remember what it's called, and I vaguely remember what it was about, but I think Matt Damon was in it. It was like about rugby or something. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't know the movie, but
Um, I'm sitting in the theater watching getting ready to watch a completely different movie, and the trailer for this Mandela movie came on, and I remember having just being so angry. I'm like, can you believe this guy stood for something amazing, and like he's dead because of it, and now they're putting this movie about his life, and it's about rugby. Like, why rugby? And I was like so mad, and like they were just really not showing the effect that he had. And now, like, then fast forward years later, and then I'm like, why is he on Oprah? Like, what is the disconnect here? I thought he was dead. And it was even later on after that, because I thought it was weird, but I just didn't have any information. I'm like, I guess I was wrong. And I just was kind of embarrassed that I had this, thinking back to the open conversation I had in public about him being dead. I'm like, oh my God, I must have sounded like a real dummy. And then I started hearing all these other people had the same issue, where they were sure that he was dead, and then he wasn't dead. And it was, plus the Bernstein Bears. I know it's the Bernstein Bears. I don't know what this other thing is, but I know it was the Bernstein Bears. And a lot of the other ones, like Luke, I'm your father. You know what I mean? Like, it was so, they were just so obviously like something's wrong. So yeah, definitely.
don't you find it just as strange that people don't notice it?
I find a lot of things strange. I find that people might even notice things that they don't care enough to contemplate it. Like, there's so many other things. Like, some people who are still deeply with their head in the sand there's just so many really, really clearly obvious things that are wrong with the world that they should be considering and discussing, and it's just like, really, they don't care. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I was awake to the fact that we'd been lied to about a lot of things and chemtrails, and I was looking for Planet X around 2012, but that was totally not connected with my spiritual awakening or whatever. So your channel is really about self-love and confidence and passion-driven goals, and I think it's, when did you feel the drive really to start trying to help people in this way with the YouTube channel?
I think it was less about when I felt like I needed to help and more about when I give myself the permission to do it, because I was brought up in a very conventional atmosphere. Like, I was in music surrounded by people who are in like the conventional industry. So industry things are supposed to be like this, and you're supposed to present yourself in a certain way in your image and blah blah, and everything's fake and whatever. And I grew into that mentality because that was all I knew, and I just adapted to my environment. So as when I started waking up, I think essentially on a certain level I was just awake my entire life, but I was all alone. And like my mom too is also pretty awake, but when you're outnumbered, it's really hard to be yourself. And it, for so much of my life, like, the internet changed everything. The ability to just share music online instead of having to burn it on CDs or cassette tapes or whatever, like, it just changed what your possibilities were in terms of what you could do with your life, and gave you the ability to choose to do something helpful instead of doing what was profitable, because you could be profitable and also be helpful. And so yeah, that was a big part of it.
You can also be profitable and I guess doing what you like to do, but miserable because you're not really being true to yourself. Like
Absolutely.
And that was one of the things that I noticed in one of your videos, talking about how you had started the channel and then you had to deal with trolls. I mean, really, this is a problem that extends through all aspects of anytime you're in public light. It's like, it's hard to be yourself because, at every turn, you're going to get flack for being yourself and being real and true to who you are. And it's really a learning process, isn't it? To start loving yourself and to accepting, that we all have flaws, and it can be a hurdle to get over, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that want to do YouTube channels and stuff, I think that holds them back. And or it holds them back from showing their face or whatever. I think it helps to connect with people better when you can see their face.
100%. It adds credibility.
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of people have their BS detectors on. They can tell that you're being truthful or whatever. But
that's exactly it. And this is a community of truth detectors.
Yeah, it sure is.
And so when you post a video with like a robotic voice and you don't show your face, you don't tell people who you are, of course we're wondering if, are you really channeling, or are you just trying to get that YouTube money? You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's totally true.
Just be yourself. And I think now we're in a time, and I just wanted to say before I finish that sentence, I want to say, hi guys, I'm really sorry, like, I'm slow to respond. I see the chat's going really fast. I'm like can't read and talk and listen. It's like too many things for my brain. But yeah, I think right now is a really a point. I think one of the messages that we're being given right now is the importance of being authentic and being ourselves, and talking openly about, hey, you know what? Aliens are real, man. And it's not just me that believes that, because it's not a belief, it's just a fact. And if you want to keep, living your life in denial about, how this isn't all there is, well, you're the one who's crazy. And, sorry.
I think we've reached a point now where, people realize that it is more improbable, even if you haven't seen any UFOs or anything like that, or had any direct contact or anything like that. It's just less probable that we're the the only thing going on right now. You know, that there's not something else going on, even if it's other beings in our oceans. If you think how vast our oceans are, I've often thought that too. I'm like, even if they're not from another planet, they could totally be from the middle of the ocean somewhere, and we would just never know. You know what I mean? It's a lot of places to hide. Or the inner Earth. That's another thing that's come up quite a bit for me, is that, you know, there could totally be another civilization inside the Earth, and it's a big planet, you know. So,
there is, yeah, I believe Agartha, is that what it's called? I believe
yeah,
that's the real thing, and I'm like just waiting. There's all these concepts that we like experiment with in our minds, you know, like we're just like, hey, maybe that's true, but a large part of those things that, let's say years ago, they were like, hey, you know what? I bet you that aliens are real, or I bet you I got this feeling that maybe like some people really do have like psychic powers. And then fast forward however many years, and you're like, no, that's a definite fact. People do have out of body experiences. We do reincarnate. We do, you know, and all these things start. They're just, we develop this overwhelming amount of evidence that these things that we were just meddling with as like potential ideas that could be possible actually turned out to be real. And the reason that they came up in our minds was because it was the truth finally, you know, through various venues coming into our consciousness.
yeah, definitely. I've had, I'd have to admit that a lot of the, you know, out of body experiences and near death experiences, I really needed the scientific proof or evidence before I was finally on board. And I think there's enough of that out there now. There's enough of, you know, where you got people that said they died, and then they were like in the waiting room, they saw where different people were seated, or they saw a sticker on the top of the light above their body that they wouldn't have been able to see if they hadn't floated up above, and all sorts of little things like that that I feel like are, you know, evidence of something going on. Maybe it doesn't prove every single instance is true, but it's enough that I definitely believe something's going on. You know, we're not really what our physical body is. There's more to us than these vehicles we travel around in daily.
Definitely.
If you guys have any questions to direct, you can direct them to, you're actually in the chat, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah, there you are.
In the chat. So I'm like watching the lagged version of you and the chat, and then I'm hearing like the current version of you, and I'm just like, sometimes my brain is not understanding what's going on.
Like, it does get confusing. Really, I totally ignore the chat, the video itself, and just look at the chat. And because like right now it looks like you're talking, but it's really me talking. So yeah, it gets confusing.
I want to acknowledge that you have a lot of French people in your chat, and I think it's really cool. Like, je viens de Montréal, alors moi je parle français, so j'essaie des fois de parler à Josee en français, puis elle peut pas voir mes commentaires, mais je trouve que c'est cool. I know you didn't know what I said, but they do.
That's cool. Yeah, Josee will understand. Yeah. So if she's talking bad about me, Josee, tell me later. I'm just playing. I mean, I took tons of Spanish. I know, se Juan de 3:16, pues de tal manera amó Dios al mundo que dio a su único hijo para que todo aquel que crea no perezca, sino que tenga vida eterna. It's John 3:16. I had to memorize it.
No entiendo nada.
Pequeña, muy pequeña.
No.
That's
nice,
so funny.
Josee. I compris.
So you can speak fluently in French?
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's kind really of, difficult. You have to when you live here. Some people don't, but it's really hard to get by when you don't.
Oh, are you in Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Awesome. What part of Canada are you in?
Montreal.
Oh, okay.
In Montreal too. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of Canadians, so I hope you weren't offended by my addict comment. It really came from...
No. If you're not offended by my American jokes, then I'm not offended by yours.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Josee saying stuff back, but I don't understand. But I guess you would.
Okay, nobody's
So what?
talking.
So, so so what's the weather like? There is it
It's
getting any better?
terrible, like 100% of the time. I mean, it's gloomy a lot here, and that's kind of like I'm really motivated to leave Montreal, but I'm waiting to get my message as to where. I feel like it's really when it's time it'll be clear, but it's not going to tell me until it's time, and it's not time. So I just sit here, wait, and be miserable. Just like sun.
So, so when you did your QHHT session, did you get any direction about stuff like that, about the future or where you should be headed, or?
I asked that, and I didn't get an answer. I got the answer that it wasn't time. That I have to concentrate on what I need to do here first, and it's really weird because about a month ago or so, no, actually a couple months ago, I was thinking about moving to Alberta to be closer to my grandmother, and I was intuitively told to wait and that the answer would be very clear to me and I would have absolutely no doubt as to whether or not I should move there. And I would find out soon. And I called my grandmother and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about moving there. I'm looking for a place. She's like, great, I'll help you. If you come here, I'll drive you around. We'll go look for places. And then a few weeks later, she died.
Oh, wow.
So there was my answer.
Well,
And
sorry to hear that. Yeah, Angela's from there. Are you familiar with Angela that came on the show?
I am, but she's from Calgary. I was gonna go to Edmonton.
Oh, okay.
And oh yeah, my grandmother had died on the 18th or 19th, the Monday. That was supposed to be the day that I think it was like one of the days that like the wave hit or something like that. And so I was fully, I hadn't even remembered about this event stuff. I wasn't even following it at that point. I knew of it from like 6 months ago when I fell upon Allison's videos. It was really like synchronistic about how it all happened. And then right after she died, I was like told, go look up the event. And I'm like, okay. And I looked it up. I'm like, oh my God, it's supposed to be happening now. And all this crazy stuff is happening. So.
Yeah, that's funny how people will hear what she was saying and she reported 3 to 6 months. And then like, as soon as 3 months were up, they were like, see, it failed. I'm like, dude,
here's I'm glad you brought that up because there's something really important that I want to say about QHHT or regression or whatever. And legally, I can't call it QHHT because Dolores' criteria was if you do it online, you can't call it QHHT. So they call it something else, but it is the same thing. What I want to say is that unless you're like out, like I believe it's called the somnambulistic state or something like that, like
right.
You are out and your conscious mind has no say in what's going on. The majority of the time, your egoic mind is going to interject and it's going to color what's coming out of you. And you have to choose to relax and to let the truth come out and have absolutely no bias in what's coming out of you. But there are moments, especially when you're asked things that are personal or whatever, there are moments when the previous information you have, or if you have strong feelings about something, you will color or bias the information that's coming out of you. So when people ask for specific dates, there's tons of reasons why that information is not going to be accurate. And, part of that is because when you're asking them a specific date, your ego kind of takes over the conversation.
I think that's important to know because one of the things I just presented recently about a time frame was this person had no idea about the event, which to me was awesome because that what you were just talking about really doesn't play a factor. If they'd never heard about the event up until that point, and then they give this information about it happening this year still. And like I said, they have no idea anything about previously to that, then that really adds a lot of validity to it, because you know that they didn't just come up with it, or they aren't, it isn't just wishful thinking. They didn't come across Allison Coe's video and they're just thinking about how she said, 3 months. So I think with her, she was, it was really a compilation of a lot of different people, and she was getting the whole 3 month to 6 month thing. And so we're still well within the window. And according to the one where the person had no idea about it, it started in the middle of March and it's supposed to go for a few more months. So that's still well within that 3 to 6 month range. So I know a lot of people were they just couldn't wait to leave a comment like that anyway. But, even Allison said, when she said, I'm just reporting, still pay your taxes. Don't, just put it on the shelf, take it with a grain of sand or salt or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Funny enough, another synchronicity, which is a super ironic synchronicity, is that this morning or yesterday I started listening back to a book I had got months and months ago, and it's David Wilcock's book, The Synchronicity Key.
Mm-hmm. Great book. I read that.
Yeah. It was published in 2014. That's what I was looking up. It was published in 2014. And I wrote down the time I wanted to play it for you, but there's like no way I'm going to find it without going through my thing for like 20 minutes. But he specifically talks about the event. He specifically, in 2014, his book was talking about information that he had gotten years prior about the event that's happening now. There will be an event. Like, it's the same language, the same definition, the same purpose, whatever, and the same time frame. So now is the time. But I feel like I feel like the message in my videos were very accurate, that we do have a say in terms of when we experience things, because we don't really understand time to its full extent. We don't really understand time. And we do our actions and the way we think and all this does have an effect on how and when we experience this stuff. That's how I feel.
Excuse me. That I'm trying to remember, because I read like 3 of his books in a row, like really close together. So it sucks, because now when I think back, I'm like, was it that book? Was it that book? Or was it that book?
The red cover with the key on it, and
I had the ebook. So
that about time loops, like how we're repeating the same circle of events kind of thing over and over and over again through history.
Is that the one where he was talking about the golden age towards the end and the
I believe so.
Okay, yeah, because
you might be talking about that in multiple books. I don't really remember.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to tell. Yeah. It is hard to tell them apart because they're so long. They're so long, and when you listen to them, so close together, it's really hard to differentiate.
Yeah, and I did the source field investigations and the synchronicity keys back to back, because, which I don't even remember which one I did first, but I fell in love with the book, and it's like, oh, I've got to have more of this, you know what I mean? And but one of them he was talking about, he really got into the founding fathers and how they knew about this coming event, and really a lot of their the Freemason and all the things that we think of as cabal or Illuminati has really, they've taken that old information and like hijacked it and tried to use it for more evil purposes. But the founding fathers knew about it, and they really weren't like that. So I just found that to be interesting, because we always think this has been going on, and we know they were Freemasons, and we think, well, they're the same thing as what we see nowadays. But everything else in life is, even the story of Jesus has been taken and twisted and corrupted into something completely different than it seems like he originally intended it to be. So we can't really expect anything not to get tainted over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I'll have to look into that. And did he give a time frame, the part that you were wanting to show? Because I can go look for it later and present it.
I'm not done. I'm still like around that part, and I have like a couple hours left in the book. But it was saying I believe it was like based on a channeling of Ra, and he was saying 30 years, not necessarily the event, but maybe the lead up to the event. Like everything's kind of vague, you know what I mean? But it is the now. It was like 30 years after the year 1981, which was like 7 years ago or something like that.
Right.
Like
So
that.
have you read The Law of One yet?
No, I had the synchronicity key, and the other one where it's split up, like half the book is about his life and half the book is about like the science behind a lot of stuff. I don't
Oh,
remember
okay.
what.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets a lot of stuff from the actual Law of One, which you can read that online at the lawofone.info, I think it is.
Yeah, I started reading some of that, yeah.
It's a little difficult to read at first because they've got their own vocabulary. Vibratory sound complex, I think, is what they use for word and stuff like that. So,
Oh my God.
but it gets easy over time when you like, even someone's name is a vibratory sound complex. They'll say by the vibratory sound complex you call Hitler. Like what? Why don't you just say name? So
It's really weird.
yeah, it's weird stuff.
Oh, the extension, the harvest.
Yeah.
Like really creepy.
Yeah, it does sound creepy. And it's actually the language Jesus used in the Gospels was
Real
the harvest.
yeah, I vaguely remember seeing something about that word being used in the Bible.
Yeah.
That is equally creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. And where there's wheats and tares and
Yeah.
and we're seeing more of that now.
Yes.
So
It's coming back to me now, yeah.
were you raised religious, or what's your sort of your
I kind
upbringing?
of was, like, my family's not hardcore, like we don't go to church or anything, but I went to catechism. I'm Italian, like I'm half Italian, half Irish, so I still had to go do the whole big family church dumb stuff. So I was dragged to church, like kicking and screaming to get my communion done and my all that, go to catechism and all that. And actually, there's a funny story. This one day, and now I'm remembering it, and I feel like the other day I finally understood what exactly happened there. But when I was a kid and was being forced to go to catechism, I really didn't want to go, and I was like arguing so that I didn't have to go. Like, it's all fake anyways, blah blah blah. But I said something. The point I was arguing was an atheist point, and while I was like yelling at my parents and they're trying to talk me into going, I had a tape player. For all you kids in the chat, you have no idea what I'm talking about. I had a cassette player, like a radio that played cassettes, and it was like far from us, but it was in the room, and it literally just started playing on its own. And what was even weirder was that it started playing a cassette tape that was inside the machine it was a sermon. It was someone giving a sermon, and nobody in the house buys those tapes, listens to those tapes. No one had any idea where it came from. No one, like, to this day, I'm like, Mom, remember I was a kid and this tape thing? Did you do that just to trick me? And she's like, I swear on my life, I have no idea where that came from. So it just like came out of literally nowhere. And now I understand that event probably happened for a reason for my path, because I needed to doubt atheism. I needed to know that there was something else.
Oh, I totally understand that. Yeah, having those wake up moments. Even at sort of my lowest point which was probably a year ago, when I just thought that, what we call God is mainly energy, sort of like the Source Field Investigations book by David Wilcock, except, I definitely never went all the way to the point of being an atheist, because I can really see how life thrives and everything. And I just thought maybe there wasn't any higher personal power. Like there was this all intelligence that sort of ran everything, but it didn't like interact with us on a personal basis, like I had been raised to believe within the church or whatever. So I don't know. I never did understand atheism, and just because it's just so much. It's like a pastor, or I'm sorry, a preacher that I used to play the drums for. He had a perfect analogy. He said, "You'd never be walking across the beach and find a timepiece and pick it up and think it just happened there by accident." And that's sort of always been my view on things. There's such an intelligence in humans and animals and insects, and just the way our eyebrows are designed to sort of make the sweat roll off this way. I mean, when you really pay attention to how we're designed,
it's like way too perfect.
yeah, it's way too perfect. And our eyelashes are like filters to keep stuff out. You know, we can squint our eyes and we create these little filters that keep dust out of our eyes if it's like a sandstorm. And there's so many perfect things about us that I definitely see problems too, you know, and people will get into that. A lot of atheistic doctors will say, well, there's all these design flaws and something like, well, I'd like to see you do better than the eyeball. You know what I mean? Think about how advanced the eyeball itself is.
And a lot of those, a lot of the issues that we have physically have to do with the environment that we're put in.
That's true.
You put the body in a different environment, in a healthy environment, and it'll be healthier. You know?
Yeah. And they say that just things like, well, we aren't really designed to walk upright. And, you know, just, I don't know, just they have a lot of problems that I don't really see as problems myself. But I see.
For me, it's the gap between humans and the most intelligent animal. It's like there is and people want to argue the whole whatever missing link, and oh well, it's because we discovered fire. No, no, no. It's like, okay, well, give fire to a dog and then see how long it takes him to start a democracy. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a massive, massive gap, and I think that it's more ignorant to not question it. It's more ignorant just to believe that in questioning it shows that there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your mentality if you choose not to question things, is my take on things. Like, how do we discover things in the first place? How do we, you know, develop technologies? How do we develop scientific, you know, anything? Is by questioning everything.
Definitely. Yeah. And just, I think when you look at animals, you can see how a little kitten grows. You can see the line of from the kitten to the lion, and you know the whole feline line, and then from you know the little puppy dog all the way to the wolf. And these are like all separate lines. I always had a difficulty seeing how, you know, where do you get from the kitty cat all the way to the wolf and then pass through the lion and all that in between. It's just like, it seems like life just sprang up in all of these individual lines. And you can see evolution within similar things, but just not across all of them. Like, you know, we just started in this primordial soup and went from this amoeba all the way to the human. And then there's all these things left in between, just never really made sense to me, you know? And then there's the whole Cambridge explosion, where they can see all of this life spring into being at a certain time in history and all that. And then now we got all this stuff about giants coming out, which I don't know if it's a Mandela effect, but I saw this video not too long ago where you can see like the mountains are shaped like gigantic humanoid figures and stuff. And it's like they say they petrify and turn into a mountain at some point. I'm like, man, that would be a huge person. Then the trees, a lot of these plateaus that look like tree trunks that would have been like 6,000 foot tall trees or something like that. So there's a lot of strange things happening all around us. But it's just, I say question everything and stay open-minded, you know?
Yeah. And on that, questioning everything, I'm like kind of reading the chat, and I'm not catching it all, but I'm getting some people are saying that David Wilcock weirds them out. And they're trying to figure out where they've seen me before. And just in those comments, I'm just like, oh my God, now I get what people have to, like, just the grand scale when people like on the internet or whatever, and then people start to make assumptions about them and who they are and whatever. So what I want to say about that is, guys, if you have a weird feeling about that, that's about anyone, that's totally valid, and you should absolutely question everything. Prejudging someone isn't necessarily fair, but definitely question things and take your time and, you know, do your research. about me and whoever. But the other thing is that I find that one of the biggest problems that we have is that we put people on pedestals. Like if David Wilcock wants to be this person that represents truth and disclosure and all these things, we tend to put people like that on a pedestal and think that they only intend good, and all their decision making has to be it's always the right decision, and they always know what to do, and they always say the right thing, and they always tell the truth, and all these things. And then something happens where something doesn't feel right, or they say something turns out to not be true or whatever, and the whole thing unravels, and we question everything they've ever said, and we're like, it's a scam. The whole thing's a giant scam, and this person's like a huge fraud. And the thing is that people are people. Everyone, no matter how famous they are, no matter how rich they are, no matter how smart they are, they're all flawed people who have good moments and bad moments. And they might be more motivated to tell the truth a lot of the time, but everybody at some point has said something, whether purposely or by accident, has said something that wasn't accurate or wasn't true. So when you're going to go take one little thing that they've said and like tear them apart because of it, that's also not fair. Question your decision-making process and in all of that. So all I'm saying is question things and never assume that anyone is perfect, is what I'm saying.
Definitely. Yeah, that's good advice. One thing I've noticed with David Wilcock is, well, first off, he came out with Corey Goode, which a lot of people have a problem with. And
I get that though. I get
that. And I get it too. And you know what? And I think Corey Goode is being honest, but I just don't know that he hasn't been programmed or something.
Yes,
I mean,
100%. What you said it.
Right. I'm like, if he's been in these programs, he'll admit he's been in these mind control programs. How do you know that what he remembers as being true isn't just, and I take what he says, I put it on the shelf for later, and if it pans out, it pans out. But a lot of people take him and they say, well, David Wilcock must be, a shill or in on it or something like that. And then another thing I've noticed with David Wilcock is all these channels popping up on YouTube playing his really old stuff as if it's new and not placing a date on it. So you've got him back in like 2011 saying, towards the end of the year, there's this one broadcast that keeps popping up where he's like, we're expecting something by the end of the year, next year. And I keep seeing it pop up. I saw it pop up at the end of 2016. It popped up on another channel at the end of 2017. And then when nothing happens, he was wrong that one time, but it looks like he's wrong every year because they keep reposting this old broadcast.
Right. And that's not his fault. It's, again, going back to the people who are posting things to take advantage of people's interest in the topic so that they can make ad revenue.
Exactly.
So we have to be diligent and be careful about where the source is, what the source is, and where this information is coming from, who posted it. Is there a date? Is there a way to verify? And just be really careful about what we consume. And sometimes it's really hard because you don't know till you click on the video and then you're like, shit.
You got me again. Yeah. The comments are a really good place because there's always someone who knows his material more than you, and they'll be like, dude, this is from like 2013. Why are you playing this again? And so I always tend to watch the comments, and then you can typically figure out where it's from or whatever. But it's like he made one prediction, and it was just with the information he was getting, and it's like people keep running with that same thing over and over again. And to me, it's almost like, I think of it beyond the ad revenue, like you mentioned. I think, are these people that's really trying to discredit him? Because I know he's like on Gaia TV now. He's not even putting any new stuff out on YouTube. I think he's got a contract where he only puts stuff out on Gaia. So anything I see that's,
it's his network, or he produced it or came up with the idea or something like that.
Right. Yeah, because he's got to get paid, and YouTube isn't a great way to make money. That's for sure. But yeah, he's on there all the time, and lately he's had this other guy on there that's really interesting. That's talks about all this different technology, and they're hoping all of this comes out and stuff. But, you know, you just got to take it with a grain of salt and, you know, put it on the shelf, and hopefully it pans out. And I think that's the same thing with this whole event. People want it so badly that they just hear 3 months and not 6 months, or this year or whatever. And I think it's a process, and, you know, it's hard to nail down a time. It's like, it's steps. It's we're making progress, and I can see the progress we're making. It's evident, you know, even in my own personal life. You too?
Sorry.
You too?
I am kind of, I mean, on one hand, yeah, you know, of course, I want things to get better. I want things to improve, and it's good that this stuff is happening. On the other hand, there's a part of me that's just like, wants it to take longer, because I feel like I came here to do something. I came, like, my whole life, my whole life, I was just like, I know I came here to do something. I just can't remember what it was. I don't remember what I'm supposed to do. And then finally I get to a point where it all makes sense, and I understand why I'm here, and you know, what my part in it is, and it's all over. Like,
Right.
no, just give me some time, man. Just give me some time. Let me make some YouTube videos. Let me, like, do some stuff. And
right.
Yeah, so I don't know.
That's funny, because I felt just like that when I woke up like a year ago to everything, and I was like, man, I'm supposed to be doing this and this, and I was like, oh my gosh, how long have I been oversleeping? You know, I felt this overwhelming need to catch up, like
Yes.
I've been asleep too long, you know. So now I feel like it's totally everything's working out the way it's supposed to. Even the book I had as a kid, Milton, the Early Riser, that's starting to make sense now. It's like, you know, a lot of humanity still needs to wake up, and it's just, it takes people time, you know. People are groggy.
Yeah. I'd like to go back to the Corey Goode thing for 2 seconds, because there's something that I really want to talk about. I'm going to do a video about it, but since we're here, I'd really like to talk about it.
Sure.
I totally resonate with the idea that I think Corey is a really good-hearted person, and he means well, and he's doing what he believes is the right thing to do. But yes, I do question whether or not he has been programmed, and I'm leaning towards the side very strongly that he has been, because I myself have experienced things, and with what I'm learning now, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense with what I believe, what I know now. And I'm going to get really weird now. So if anybody from the conventional world is listening to this, they're going to think I'm real crazy now. But I have had post-traumatic stress disorder basically my entire life in regards to the grays. It's the kind of thing where I was like constantly terrified, spent many, many nights awake with the lights on, constantly terrified. And to the point where I have like a physiological reaction, like overwhelming reaction to the sight of them, like a picture or bringing them up in conversation. It's like I could watch a horror movie and be like, ah, that's scary for like 2 seconds, and then be over it. And it was even fun. I'd be like, oh, let's watch some ghost movies or like some vampire movies, and it didn't bother me. I'd even play with the Ouija board. It didn't bother me. I was like, this is fun. But the mention of grays or a picture, like if I'm scrolling in the internet and then like I see a picture of a gray, and I'm just like I have like a actual go into panic mode, and my heart's like, ugh, and like I'm sweaty and tense, and I'm just like completely overwhelmed by this terror. And I was always like, why would I have such a strong reaction to one specific type of alien, and not goblins or anything else? Nothing else bothers me. I'm not afraid of anything except for spiders. Don't like spiders. And little things started to like happen, and I started coming to terms with the fact that I think that I was taken. When I was a kid, there's like a dent on the back of my leg, like a scoop, okay? Like a chunk of skin was taken out of the back of my leg. There's still a scar there. And I've had it for years, and I remember the night that it happened, where I was a kid. I was sleeping in my bed, and I felt this burning, pinching feeling on the back of my leg. And it was weird because it was like I remember being unconscious and becoming conscious of the pain and not having any other sense perception. I couldn't hear, I couldn't see, I couldn't move, I couldn't open my eyes. All I could feel, all I could sense was the pain on my back, on the back of my leg. And then the next thing I remember is that I woke up in my bed and I still had the pain. I felt the back of my leg and there was this new dent in my leg. And years later, I was looking it up on the internet and looking up this like list of signs that maybe you were an abductee. And one of them was this scoop of skin taken off your
like
body.
A biopsy or something, huh?
Yeah. And in the scoop, there should be like a red line. So I took a mirror and I looked at it and I'm like, oh my God, there's a little red line in it. Like, this is blowing my mind right now. And I'm terrified. And so coming to like the more recent past, about 2 years ago or so, I went out, I was at my parents' house. I was just like sleeping over for the night, or maybe 1 or 2 nights. I was sleeping at my parents' house and I had my cats with me and I went to take out the litter to the garbage and I walked outside. I walked down the steps. I start going to the back of the house. I get to the driveway and then something told me to look up, and I look up and there's a freaking UFO like a big triangle, and I'm just like, and I just like put the bag down and I like backed up and I walked back into the house. I was like, I walked back into the house. And as I was walking back in the house, my mom starts looking out the window and she was on the phone and she's like, did you see a UFO? I'm like, yeah, why, did you see it? She's like, no, your brother saw it from like 2 blocks over or whatever. Like, his house is in the same vicinity, but like, you know, several blocks over. So he's, I hope he never sees this video because he like would hate that I outed him right now. He's like very conventional 3D. And he was there, his wife was there, and his friend were there. So they all saw the exact same UFO that I saw. So there was no way that I could rationalize it away and be like, oh, maybe I didn't see that. Or, you know, be convinced that I didn't see what I saw, because I had witnesses and they're very not into this stuff. None of them.
That is so wild.
Yeah.
I love this topic, and we don't get on it very much. So
yeah. So 6 months ago or so, for some reason, I was sitting in, so I'm on Netflix and the Stan Romanek documentary keeps popping up in the suggested videos. And I'm terrified every time I see a gray. So I was just like, whoa! I was just like scrolling past and I'm like, no, I don't want to see that. And something in the back of my head was like, you have to overcome the fear. You have to overcome the fear. You have to watch this show. You have to watch it. So I'm like, okay. It took me like a week to like talk myself into it. And I watched it and I'm like, okay. So he was talking about how they took him and they fixed his knee and stuff like that. And he was questioning the same things as I was, like, are they good? Are they bad? What's really going on? Is it the military? Like, what's really going on? And I think that most, if not all of us, are questioning the same things. And it's really, really hard to understand what's going on. But something told me, now is the time you need to get past the fear and get over it and get a grip. So I consciously made an effort to overcome my fear of the grays. And so now I can see a picture and it doesn't totally bother me anymore. But I started meditating and something told me to try. I was really, really interested in channeling. So I start meditating and consciously allowing for things to communicate with me or to inspire me with information. And I'd have people like sit down in front of me and be like, ask me questions, let's see what I answer. Like, let's just be open-minded about it. So I'd sit there and I'd start answering their questions. And what I find is that the easiest things to answer are things that my ego has no idea. So if you ask me a question about your life, I know nothing about your life, I could probably give you really, really accurate information. Whereas if my brother asks me questions about his life, I know everything about his life. I'm going to tell him whatever my ego tells me to tell him.
Right. That makes sense.
One night, not too long after this, so I had worked on the fear. I had been meditating all the time, and I had started channeling and openly inviting communication with ETs or whatever. And one night I was in bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, being like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I went to close the window, and it was cold. I went to close the window, and something was like, I just knew that something was outside, and I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see it. So I just was like, I'm gonna close the window, and I'm not gonna look outside. And I go lie down, and what was weird, I just realized this yesterday, is that my cats were out cold, and it's not like them to, all three of them, to stay completely asleep when I get up. When I get up, it's like they feel me move, and they're awake, they're ready, especially at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's breakfast, you know? And they were completely out cold. So I lie down, I had my phone in my hand, I checked the time, and then my phone fell out of my hand. And about a minute later, the lights outside seemed to go off, like someone shut the lights outside, like the street lamp or whatever. It could have been because it was morning, but it was still dark. So it shouldn't have happened till like an hour later. And I noticed the lights go out, and then all of a sudden I feel this flush of weird chills. It's just like this weird flush of energy all over my body. And in this exact same moment, this apparition, like this shadow being, appeared right in front of me, standing by my bed. And all I could think was, because I had practiced getting over the fear, was, I guess we're making progress because I can see you now. And then I closed my eyes, or like I was like falling asleep uncontrollably, like I was awake, and then I just started passing out. And as I was closing my eyes, I got a picture of a gray with, like, I could tell like he had wrinkles. So I remember thinking, I know people say that maybe they're robots, but it has wrinkles. Like, why does he have wrinkles if it's just a mask? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I remember instinctively knowing that I could read him, like I could read his mind. And I just stared into him, and to know who he was and why he was here. And as I did that, his face backed out of my view, and another face of a young girl with like no hair came in, and a beaming smile came right in front of him. And then I like passed out, and then I woke up like a few seconds later, and I checked the time on my phone, and the whole process, I think including the window, had taken about 15 minutes. And it was the weirdest thing ever.
Oh my gosh, it's so wild. There's a book you might want to check out. It's called and I just stumbled upon it. I had like free credits with like Audible or whatever, you know, when you get one of those free trials, and it was called Forgotten Promise, and it was about this lady. She lived her whole life and didn't remember any of her abductions. She just remembered some weird times where she was missing time, and she just kind of always blew it off. But then she was being abducted by her own people, basically, and they were wiping her memory. But after going through hypnosis, she was able to bring back some of her memories. And but that's why she named it Forgotten Promise, because she promised to come and do that. Oh, you did?
Yes.
Really good book. And it reminds me of what you're saying, sort of like, you know.
I read that book shortly before that incident. It was like I was inspired. I was pushed in a direction, you know, like I'm sure everybody here can relate to this, how you're given little signs and you're like kind of guided to go in a certain direction, and you like just find things on the internet that are perfectly appropriate to what is going on in your life or questions that you're pondering. And I was told to watch the Stan Romanek thing, and I was told to read that book. And I also read the Dolores Cannon Keepers of the Garden, I think it was.
So what part of I was trying to get the title of the author of that book. I can't find it though. But what first off, somebody asked in the chat what the name of the Netflix movie you just named was again.
If you search Stan Romanek, I'm gonna write it here. Stan
Romanek.
Almanac. You should find it.
That's the
what it's called. It should be like the first one that pops up.
Oh, okay. And then what was the other? Oh, so what about your experience? Doesn't jive with what you hear with Corey Goode? Because someone else had mentioned Corey Goode. He was sort of pushing the whole idea of waiting for it to be saved instead of doing it ourselves. But he's changed that in recent days. And I was like, he's, at least in the last year or whatever, he's been saying that his contacts saying that we need to do this ourselves. They will be here in a supporting role, but it's really up to us to make the shift or to help evolve ourselves.
No, I believe we definitely have to do it ourselves, and they're helping us not kill each other. They're helping us not kill everyone in the universe, I think. And they're guiding us when we ask for assistance, but no, they're not doing it for us, because that's like going into a high school and sitting beside your kid and just like filling out the test for them.
Right.
So
what about Corey Goode?
Just like in reference to how he talks a lot about, or he has talked a lot about, I'm not familiar with all of his work, but I know that he has talked about like a very three-dimensional perspective of, all these people like getting together in a meeting, and all these super negative ETs being involved in all this. And that's not what I see. That's not what I am familiar with. And I know I wish I'm like losing my memory in terms of what I saw. I watched one of his videos literally like yesterday, the day before, that inspired me to say that, because it's the whole fear mongering around the ETs. If they're, are they good or are they bad, or are they this or are they that? And yes, I do think that there are possibly / probably like the reptilians and stuff like that, that altered our DNA for whatever purposes, which made it a lot harder for us to catch up. So now we have like all this technology and we don't have the wisdom to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just very, very intricate, and we want to look for the heroes and the villains, and the black and white, and everything's really a gray area. And we need to understand that it's a gray area. But the main point that I disagree with the Corey thing is that I don't believe in the whole 3D, more tangible. Like when I had my experience with this thing that came into my room, it wasn't 3D. It wasn't a person that knocked on my door and said, "Hey, what's up? Can I come in?" It was like etheric, and they come when they know you can handle it, or they don't let you remember, but they don't purposely hurt you. I think our experience remembering that, like the fearful version of the experience, is because we don't remember enough details to understand the purpose of what's going on. Like, are we being abducted to create a hybrid race? Yeah, probably. But is it this terrible thing that we're being violated? No, I'm pretty sure that we volunteered. Like when they say, "Oh, you volunteered and you have a contract and all this," yeah, I think we really did. I think through empathy and understanding their situation, that they don't breed. I don't think they understand how humans work. I don't think that they understand our emotions. They don't understand sexual interaction or what the purpose is or how it works. They don't understand how our fear works. And, psychic or empathetic or not, they just don't understand certain things about how we are, how we operate, how we think. So they come in and they take you and they think that we're going to be a lot more okay with things in this life than we are. But I think these are agreements that we made before we incarnated. So we don't even remember that we made them with the intention to help their species and to help create a new species and all this. And it was all for the best. And then we come into this body with all this limited perception and we're like, stay away. And we're terrified. I'm like super long-winded right now.
Oh, no, it's totally good. And I just want to interject here because I know a lot of people that are watching this, because I hear it all the time where they're like, aliens are demons. And the whole problem I have with that is that originates from a Christian worldview. Now, from a Christian worldview, the fallen angels, which they're saying are the aliens, were just a third of the complete angelic hosts. So that means that for every one evil fallen angel, evil alien, as they think of it, there's two righteous or good angels to every one evil one. So that's what I don't understand. A lot of people say, oh, it's just the fallen angels that are from the Christian worldview. That's how I was raised. So I understand why they're coming from that. But they were only 1/3 of the entire angelic, angels or whatever. So if you think of it like that, then there's always two good ones to every one bad one. So the fact that they're like every single alien out there is a demon and evil, to me, is just nonsense, even from their own worldview they're coming from. So I think even if there's bad aliens out there, I don't think they're all bad. And I think we're dealing with a highly evolved race when we talk about aliens. And I think most of the evil ones probably would have killed themselves. And they certainly, if they wanted to, harm us, they have the technology to just wipe us out just like that. I mean, so I feel like Hollywood has really pumped them up to be like our equals, but advanced, like to have the violent mentality we have, but the technology to be, I don't know, just an opponent that we would have a difficult time dealing with, But in essence, I think that they're probably so much further advanced in their technology that they could run in circles around us if they wanted to, and that they're nothing to fear, or, they could have already hurt us.
Yeah. I think it's really important to address this now because everyone wants disclosure, but it's just like I've said this so many times before. When you ask someone to fix things for you, like you go out and you picket in front of a building, you're like, you're mad at the president or whatever. So you get angry and you say, the president needs to fix this. What you're doing in that moment is you're declaring that you're powerless to fix it yourself. You're giving your power to this person. This person they're just a person, and the only way that they have power is when people decide that they have power. No one is going around putting a gun to your head saying, you better listen. Like even laws, like unless someone puts a gun to your head and says, hey, do this or I'm going to pop you. And even then you can decide, all right, well then pop me. Like, that's okay. I'll reincarnate next lifetime. I'll get you. but no one can ever make you do anything. You choose to do it in all situations. You choose to abide by rules someone else makes for you. You choose to give someone power over you, and we do it individually and we do it collectively. And so when we're waiting for disclosure to come officially, we're declaring that we don't have any power to do it ourselves. And so we're going to just wait and wait and wait till this organization decide, an organization that has clearly shown us over and over again for eons that they don't care about us or what we want, and that their entire priority is to continue their having power over us. Why would they give it to us? You know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, because a cloud of energy is going to come in and change everything.
Yeah.
The point is that we, as individuals and collectives, have the power ourselves to make it happen. And when we realize that, when we really realize that, we can make it happen. And I think that we should start. I think that if it's as easy as getting over the fear, doing some meditation, and then asking for communication, just being like, hey guys, I want to talk to you. I'm ready. Let's do this. And then being patient. I'm sure that we'll all have weird experiences like that. And it'll just, if enough of us try over however long it takes, like Stephen Greer is doing this now, and he's just charging like $3,000 a pop for it. So instead of paying him thousands of dollars to teach you how to do what I literally just told you how to do, try it yourself. And when we all start doing it, it's going to become the norm, and it's going to just become reality. Disclosure is just going to be. It's going to be, you're going to walk out and be like, yeah, so like yesterday I was talking to this guy named like Borchek. He's a Pleiadian. And like, you know what I mean? Just let it happen. Choose to have it happen to you.
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice. And just to validate what you were saying is with the grays and stuff, I've had that same fear feeling when I see them. I'm like, man, that would just like imagining one appearing in the room next to me that looked like that with the big old eyes and stuff. You know, I have a difficult time imagining a situation where I would be like, hey, what's up? You know, you just act normal about it or whatever. So yeah, I want disclosure, but at the same time, you know, if they appeared in my room or something, that would freak me out. You know, if
That's
like you were saying, the 3D version of them anyway.
Yeah, that's why a big part of it is the fear part. That's where you got to start, the fear. Get over the fear. Because the last thing they want to do is be like, okay, you guys, you asked us to come over. And then they land and they come out and they're like, hey, boom, boom, you know, like freaked out, got scared, and killed them. So obviously that's not the plan. So step number one is we have to overcome the fear.
Yeah, I've heard that often where, you know, they'll land on the military base and it was like they just start opening fire. I'm like, what? Why would you just start opening fire on the thing? You know what I mean? It's like, what are you thinking?
It's like they came here to help you, man.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen this footage, but it's really hilarious on one sense, but I can totally, it makes me like just have to shake my head at the fact at how different the reactions are going to be. And it's this one guy and they're looking at these UFOs and it looks like it's breaking apart, you know, and the guy's like, they're coming down, look, they're multiplying. And he's like, he's just talking about it in such like a Hollywood style, like he just watched way too many UFO movies and alien movies, and he's freaking out, and just his freaking out is freaking everybody else out. And it's like, oh man, just dude, are we ever going to be able to pull this off? You know what I mean? With a few people like that can have the whole crowd freaked out. You know what I mean? They're multiplying. They're coming to get us. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
So it was hilarious on one hand, but on the other hand, it's like, no wonder we haven't had disclosure, you know?
I think like maybe part of it is that some of us, like even in the David Wilcock book, it talks about, well, I guess there's different interpretations, but you know, I'm not really sure who's going to make it to the new earth kind of thing, right? Is it everybody, or is it like some people, and are we going to like die off and they're going to see us dying off on their version of the planet, and then we're going to see them die off on our version of the planet? Or is it just going to be like one big flash and then we're separated? It just, who knows at this point? But I think while we're talking, I'm kind of seeing this, like, if people who are waking up start getting over the fear and start interacting personally with ETs, and so we develop the norm, maybe the people, like, there's a certain amount of the population that will also catch up to us, you know, that they kind of just go with the flow. And on lots of statistic charts, you can see that it's like a curve, right? There's the pioneers, the leaders. There's a few of those who go in first, the tastemakers or whatever. And then there's like, you know, the rest, the good majority of the population will kind of follow suit as the sheep do. And then there's like a small percentage in the back who are never going to do it. Like, no, they're like, forget it. They're the last person. They have to be forced to do it. Hopefully they'll just die.
And get reincarnated. Yeah, I often wonder, just with the scenarios you just pointed out, if there's a split and we get duplicated and we sort of leave behind these NPCs or empty seaters, as Flora Brun likes to call them, like shells of our, like a 3D version of ourselves. We moved on, but we left sort of this autopilot version of ourselves behind. And I don't know, maybe we'll get a good version of the asleep people. Like we'll get this 5D version of them come with us. You know, you never know.
Maybe.
Or if, you know, people are just going to disappear or die, like you said, you know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows because we haven't been through it before. So it's all up in the air, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was wonderful having you on. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we go?
Had a lot of fun. No, it's probably a good time to call it a day in case something happens and I get interrupted. But this is kind of weird. I don't know if it's because I've watched so many of your streams, but I feel like I've known you for years. It's really weird.
Yeah, you have a really familiar feeling about you too.
Nice.
Yeah, when somebody said, "Where do I know her from?" I'm like, I don't know. I was wondering that too. Soul family, right?
Yeah, no, seriously, it could very, very likely be. Yes.
That's very cool, isn't it?
So thank you very much for having me. I love you guys in the chat. Thank you for chatting. And I was just difficult. I saw a lot of the comments. It was just really kind of difficult to like continue listening and talking and the comments, but I did see them, and thank you very much for commenting. And I love you guys. You're the best. And thank you, Shane. This was great.
No problem. And as you guys see, her link is below, and you can go subscribe to her channel and check out her videos. A lot of great videos. She's even got clips from her QHHT session. So definitely go check that out. Peace to everyone in the chat. Lots of love and light to all of you, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good one. Mm-hmm.